Namaste, everyone, and welcome to this Satsang. In this Satsang, I want to explore with you and share the wisdom of Raja Yoga, the royal path of yoga. And in many ways, it is the foremost path of yoga, because it is the path of yoga that is directly correlated to the mind, mastering the mind, controlling the mind, and essentially establishing oneself in their true nature. So in essence, Raja Yoga defines yoga as a whole. The whole idea of understanding yoga as union with the source of all existence, the source of life, the source of pure consciousness, or the Purusha, and becoming established in the very essence of this which is within us all. And the Raja Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are the foremost text or scripture on this teaching. Now keep in mind that I often speak of the different forms of yoga or the four paths of yoga as defining integral yoga, or the holistic or complete approach to yoga. And Raja Yoga is one of those four. Karma Yoga, again, is the path of action and practicality. Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of emotion and devotion, and Jnana Yoga is the yoga of intellect, knowledge. And Raja Yoga is what we will dedicate our satsanga to this evening. So I want to begin with a mantra to Ganesh. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So formal namastes. So I want to focus on four sutras, the first four verses of the Raja Yoga Sutras, as an introduction to Raja Yoga, but to also establish us with a good foundation of what Raja Yoga is and how it can work for us in our day-to-day life. Unlike the many misconceptions that exist today around yoga and defining yoga as a form of exercise, Raja Yoga is truly the correct way to define yoga, and what essentially defines the broader yoga tradition and how much it emphasizes the mind, austerity of the mind, discipline of the mind, concentration of the mind, purity of the mind, stillness, peace of mind, serenity of the mind, reflection or the reflective mind. So all of these are qualities, powers, capacities of the mind that Raja Yoga helps us to develop. It does this first and foremost by helping us to understand the mind. So the Raja Yoga Sutras in general as a whole is a study of the mind. It is a very comprehensive understanding of how the mind works and how it can work for us. You know, often when I work with my clients in counseling, or students, I often discover that they are doing yoga and that yoga is something that they're working on rather than yoga working for them. And what I mean by this is that yoga is not something that you necessarily do or go to do at 4 o'clock or after school or at the beginning of the day. Yoga is essentially a moment-to-moment practice, and Raja Yoga is a way to unite us with the source of our existence, with our true essence, on a day-to-day level, on a moment-to-moment basis. So if you're doing yoga rather than yoga working for you, then there's an antagonistic relationship you're having with the mind, with life, with your own body. What yoga is trying to teach us is to remove the antagonist, to remove the narrator, and to connect with the seer of the mind, the one that is truly seeing, knows, or is connected to pure knowledge. So this requires a little understanding of the mind, and we will explore some of these principles and teachings that are presented in Raja Yoga. So the first sutra, what does Raja Yoga do? How does it begin? Well, it's a basic introductory statement. And the sutra in the first pada, or the first chapter, called Samadhi Pada, begins by saying, Atha Yoga Anunashanam. Atha Yoga Anushashanam. Atha Yoga Anushashanam. So now we basically begin with the teaching of yoga. And what does it mean? Well, I've just gave you an introduction of what this means, and what yoga intends to do is to integrate the mind into the living fabric of consciousness that is not only within yourself, but the mind can be used to penetrate the consciousness that exists in all living things. So the mind has to overcome egoism or any separateness. The moment that we separate, segregate, and distinguish ourselves as willfully trying to achieve something or attain something, we have to ask ourselves, who is trying? Because our true essence is the soul, is eternal spirit. So what are we trying to get to? If that's what we are, who is trying to get something or attain something or separate ourselves and divorce ourselves from what we truly are? That is called the ego. The ego is doing that. So yoga, in this introduction, begins with faith, a trust, a surrender, and a knowing of our true nature. So in many ways, we cannot ignore what we really are. We should affirm our true essence. And this is where Vedanta, the philosophy, the wisdom of Vedanta is very practical. It essentially says, negate what is unreal, affirm what is real. Negate what is unreal, so push aside what you are not, objects, titles, names, forms, emotions, thoughts, moods. Negate what is unreal. Those are not real. Those are not eternal. They're not lasting. And affirm what is real. This is where the power of mantra, affirmations, good associations, satsanga, a supportive environment, and all of these factors help to bring us and to remind us of what is real. And this is what Vedanta aims to do, is to root us and keep us connected to the source of our existence, true consciousness, pure consciousness. And that process has to be continuous. It has to be consistent. And one of the things that I want to elaborate on as we introduce this concept of Raja Yoga is to define meditation. Because Raja Yoga, in essence, is meditation, establishing the mind in what is real, making it calm, making it still. And we'll talk about those in a few moments. So the second sutra is Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Again, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And essentially it means that yoga is the cessation, the neutralizing or the reduction of the mind and its thought waves, its disturbances. Chitta is essentially a all-inclusive term, a very broad term that defines the mind as a whole, the waking state, subconscious, unconscious mind. But the dwellings, the disturbances that occur within the chitta, within the mind, are what take the mind away from its powers and from connection to the soul. So it is a broad term, but it's important to understand that the mind has many capacities. It has many aspects. The mind is also correlated to the subtle body, or what we know of as the astral body. So all functions of the mind exist, and what we aim to do in Raja Yoga is to reduce these modifications, to reduce identifications of the mind and establish the mind in one-pointedness, stillness. And once that mind becomes more still, more calm, these modifications, these disturbances, if you will, begin to move away. They begin to float away. I often refer to clouds, like the clouds in the sky. They're just float away and the blue sky appears. So this is what yoga is, Patanjali says. It is the cessation of these thoughts, the cessation of the mental disturbances that occur in the mind. The mind is fickle, the mind is unsteady. And for this reason, yoga provides many techniques, many ways to control it. If the mind is controlled, the body is controlled. Mind over body. Not body over mind. What yoga aims to do is train the mind. As Maheshananda often says, do much to take care of your body, but do a little bit more to take care of the mind. We're responsible for both. We have to take care of our health. And that is a constant practice. But, however, we also need to take care of the mind. And in fact, we need to do a little bit more for the mind, because it is the mind that controls the body. Its disturbances. And meditation and the techniques of being still first in body with a straight spine. And even if it's 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes becomes a discipline that helps to steady the mind. Doing your meditation at the same time each day, or at least close, is also important, because the mind develops a synchronicity, a connection to those energies, particularly the energies of the rising sun. It feels uplifted in the morning. There's an aspiring quality that the mind latches to when that sun is rising. So it becomes very vital. In the third sutra, Patanjali says, Tada drashtu swarup avashtanam. Tada drashtu swarup avashtanam. So then the seer rests in the essential nature. So once the modifications of the mind are controlled or neutralized, Sutra 2, in the third sutra he says, then the seer finally rests. Once that's done, once the mind is controlled in this way and mastered in this way, then the seer rests in its essential nature. The seer, notice, the seer, the one who is seeing. So no longer is there disruption, no longer is there differentiation or fragmentation. That pure Purusha, pure consciousness rests in the essential nature, the soul nature. And this is essential. This is the essential purpose of life. And without this essence in our lives basically maintain or stay on a very superficial level. So we have to make this essential in our lives. And so, in a way, what we're doing is clearing the blemishes, clearing the conditions, clearing disturbances within the mind. That is healing. The more clear the mind is, or empty, the more contentment we have. Moments go and pass without any desire or prodding. So think of wind and how wind blows leaves and trees and can even bend them when it reaches hurricane force power. So is the mind. The more windy it is, the more disturbed it is, the further we are from our essential nature. And then there is some effort of trying, when we're far from our essence, we're trying to find things, to hold on to things, to objectify our life, meaning we become connected to objects, attached to objects, and our happiness becomes conditional or dependent on those objects. And again, this is that separation. So the practice of yoga and Raj Yoga is about seeing our true nature. We're resting now in the very essence of what we truly are. The transcendence to pure consciousness. So, once that step is established, now mark this point, mark this as the very beginnings of understanding yoga. This is the first chapter, the Samadhi Pada. What is yoga? Second point, yoga is the cessation of these disturbances or fluctuation. Third, now once that those fluctuations are neutralized and controlled, then one becomes established in their essential nature. And then the fourth sutra, Patanjali says, however, at other times, the seer becomes identified with the thought waves. So this is that alternative. This is the other side. Vritti sarupyam itaratra. Vritti sarupyam itaratra. And again, the vritti is that term that defines the thought wave, all of the things that are passing through our minds. Remember, we're not our thoughts. We're not emotion. We're not information. We're not all of the gatherings, the things that we collect in the mind on a day-to-day basis. That's not what we are. We can become those things. We can become associated or conditioned and develop beliefs and dependencies on those things. But yoga is aiming to remove these. So chitta, going back to the state of what chitta is in this broad context, it is defined in 5 aspects. First is mudda, like mud. It is dull, heavy, difficult to work with. Second, it is Shipta, distracted. Not knowing where it wants to go. Following this direction, then another direction. Undecisiveness. Uncertain. Anxious. And yes, it can lead to many different emotional aspects. Vikshipta is a partially distracted mind where the mind has some concentration, but then it doesn't. In Shipta, the mind is fully distracted. It is just not present. And we see that a lot in people today. You have a conversation with them. You think you're having a conversation with them. You talk to them, and they're not listening to you. They're only saying what they're thinking before you're even finished speaking. So they're just waiting for you to stop talking so that then they can say what's in their mind. Or maybe not even wait, and they interrupt. And this is very common today. People don't have conversations. They don't listen to what each person is saying. And this is a result of distracted mind. So basically what we see a lot is people speaking what's running through their minds. But that's not a conversation. A conversation is listening, hearing, and responding. This exchange goes back and forth. So the 3 lower states, mudda, the dull state, shipta, the distracted state, vikshipta, the partially distracted state, then leads to ekagrata, the one-pointed state. The concentrated state. So rarely does somebody jump from the distracted state to a one-pointed state or a concentrated state of mind. It takes time. It's a gradual process. And it happens with change in our lifestyle. If you're around calm people that have good concentration, then naturally that's going to rub off on you. If you're around distracted people, then naturally that's going to rub off on you too. So all of these factors, whatever you're taking in the mind from the environmental perspective, your routine, your daily routines of self-care and how you care for your body. How early are you getting up? Are you connected to the elements? Are you exposing yourself to sunlight, fresh air, to the earth? Or do you spend 90% of your time in a box, in a building, confined? So again, these three states are the lower states. Then at ekagrata, the mind becomes more one-pointed and focused. And then in the fifth state, the mind is niruddha, controlled. This state and these last two states are the yogi's mind. The worldly mind are the first three. Distracted, dull, and partially distracted. So these, in the Vedantic teachings, are also connected to something called the gunas, the three qualities, the general qualities of the mind. The first three, the muddha, kshipta, and vikshipta, these three primarily relate to tamas and rajas. Heaviness, dullness, and active, distracted. These are the lower chakras, the lower energy centers in the spine. The higher two of ekagrata and niruddha are of the higher chakras in the spine and relate to the sattva guna, or the mind that is more purified. And this quality of mind and concentrated mind and focus of the mind can also be established through service to others, helping others, doing more to help another person feel good, to grow, especially our parents. There's often a challenge to help our parents because of the closeness that we have and the potential triggers that some of us have with our parents. But anybody in general, it's important to help because you lose yourself. You lose the ego, becomes dissolved. And diet is also helpful. A diet that is more focused on plants and vegetables and fruits, that is natural, is very helpful. This has been proven many times over. What you eat affects the way you feel and the way that your physiology and your psychology function. So yes, our diet can help us to be focused. The quality of our life is determined by the quality of our consciousness. The quality of our lives is determined by the power of our attention. If we don't have attention and the capacity to concentrate and to focus, the quality of our lives is superficial. We measure the quality of our life based on how we can feed our senses. And so that is our measure for success. That is our measure for my life has quality. I feel good. Yes, I'm eating good food. It tastes good to me. I'm seeing good things. I'm hearing what I want to hear. So it's all based on a sensory level. But the success and the quality of life that yoga and Vedanta are defining have nothing to do with the senses. It is what is beyond the senses that yoga is trying to unite us with. It is what is beyond the mind that is real. That is the real source, the seer, the one who is seeing, knows, understands, and attains pure knowledge, pure devotion, and pure service, selflessness to humanity. So let's go through those again. When we're connected with our essential nature, and when we're resting in that state, now knowledge can enter. Pure knowledge, not intellectual, not information, not superficial, not media-based, but the knowledge of knowing what you are. That is the highest knowledge. That is real. Why are we able to attain that knowledge? Because we have removed the obstacle to the source of knowledge. Cosmic intelligence is referred to as Mahat, Purusha. That intelligence comes from Purusha, from the pure state of consciousness. Devotion is also there. Emotion is the superficial form of devotion. Emotion is not real love. It is not real connection to another person. It is sensational. It is superficial. It is passing. It is whimsical. And this is what quieting the mind and calming the mind does in meditation. It brings us to connect to our heart, to real feeling. Emotion is superficial feeling. Vata brings fear, Pitta brings anger, Kapha brings sadness. So these three elements influence the mind, influence the biology, and they disturb us. They dosha, disturb. They darken, cloud the mind, and we become associated to those things. So this is where Raja Yoga brings us to. It is royal. It is bringing us to this beautiful place. Karma Yoga and helping others brings us to a state of selflessness, where there is no identity with I am doing this. I'm doing this for you. Look at all the things that I've done for you. That type of language comes from the ego, no one else. The ego dwells in that. And so karma yoga and that connection to the source abolishes I am the doer. abolishes I am the thinker and allows us to rest in our true nature. So these states of mind exist in varying degrees in all types of people, but those that practice yoga more regularly will find themselves resting in a more concentrated state where the mind, as I often say, has a bumper. Things happen in the outer world, in the fluctuating world of time and space, and the mind isn't as reactive. The mind eventually learns to respond rather than just continuously react to these fluctuations. If you look at most of the world, it's nothing but action and reaction dynamics. That is the cycle of samsara that Buddha spoke of. Observing and seeing, witnessing people doing certain things, and then people react. Back and forth, back and forth. And I remember once sitting with Jyotir Maheshananda, and we were in a satsang, concluding a short satsang. And he said, you don't need to go far to be happy. You don't need to do a lot to have contentment. Simplify your life. Have a few friends. Don't travel too far. Enjoy the simple pleasures of life. Your community, your neighborhood, nature, going for a walk, cooking. There is pleasure there. There is power in simplicity because it slows us down. A slower mind is a more powerful mind. It is more present. It is more connected. And it has greater potential to connect to what is real. The pure consciousness that we are. So I want to conclude with a few moments of meditation. Remember, we mentioned the importance of meditating consistently, daily, around the same time, ideally at sunrise. These are the auspicious times, sunrise and sunset, each day. Practice a mantra, something that you can recite, an affirmation that is uplifting and positive. Spend more time in nature. Eat natural foods. Read spiritual books. And keep positive company. So we sit with a straight spine. We relax the muscles of the body and the shoulders and the face, the jaw. Wherever you are, wherever you may be listening to this, find a place to sit. Close your eyes and turn the eyes upwards. To that point between the eyebrows. Establish that ekagrata, that one-pointedness. Be still there. Observe your breath. Let it operate involuntarily, meaning without trying to breathe. Just let the breath flow. Watching it flow in and flow out. Now mentally a few times, just recite the cosmic sound, Om. Om is the vibration of body, of mind, and eternal spirit. Om. Let's repeat that a few times. Om. See an inner light within your heart, a flame of light. Visualize it illuminating, glowing within your inner being. Smile. Visualize yourself smiling in that light. Because you are resting in your essential nature. Radiate that light as your aura, as your attitude, as positivity, today, tomorrow, and always. Radiate that light to everyone, to everything. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Blessings. Namaste. And thank you all for attending this satsanga. So this concludes our discussion on meditation, on the importance of stilling the mind and calming the mind. And again, meditation is not something that you try to do in the sense of a struggle. Remove the struggle. Remove the dazzle, the frazzle, the disturbances of the mind, the clouds, the conditions, the confusions, and establish yourself in what is real. And allow your true essence to exist every day on a moment-to-moment basis. Be positive and share your positivity with an ailing world. Don't try to change people. Aim to be with those that live simply but think in the highest way. And naturally, our true essence, our true nature will be revealed. Let that be our true purpose. Let that be the mantra of our life. Invoke that each and every day. So that you can absolutely say, Tat Tvam Asi. Thou art that. That's what I am. Blessings. Thank you.